Hey, so it's so nice to finally see you again. It's been this time, we waited several weeks in between the module and the talk, mostly because my kiddo was on spring break, so I took 2 weeks off. So this is going to be a unique one where you've had like 30 days to digest the module and the materials before we come back and ask, like, how was it for you and what did you learn and, what do you want to share with our community about this particular deep sea diver stage of circling. Yeah, and so I guess what I would like to for us to begin, Jorge, is even if you want to just share your like personal conceptualization of deep sea diver, like
Yeah.
how does this particular stage of the 7 stage model occur for you?
So one thing I was noticing, especially after Warrior Weekend, and it's something that came up a lot in my pods and even during the Deep Sea Diver Weekend, is that in my journey in circling, I got this, a little bit developing the skills of like I could build up tension a little bit more, find more things, and then I didn't know what to do with it. And I was like, okay, it seems like now I have this hot potato, and I'm going like this a little bit. And now, how do I start to land this, right? There was like
Yeah.
that. I was very still grateful for those skills, but it did feel a little bit like what's next. Like I know even in my nervous system, it feels like what should be next is some of that. And I think one of the things that I see now after deep sea diver in my circling is that ability to go a little bit more into this in a way that starts to land somehow. It's not only about like seeing and building tension and seeing the things,
Yep.
but then from there somehow and be
Yes.
able to be with the thing a little bit more in a way that
Yes.
feels a little bit like there's completion starting at least, like
Yes.
something starting to land.
It's a perfect description, because as if sovereign is like be like, being with me truly and deeply so that I can be with you truly and deeply and like that like ground that we inhabit, an explorer is kind of like trying to get the other person's world. And then with warrior, as you said, like, we start to see the distinctions and we start to see, the dissonance and we start to see what hasn't been seen, what's in the periphery or what's in the blind spots. And then you do that and you're like, okay, well, now we've opened up all of these, Pandora's boxes, but what do I do with them? And deep sea diver is where we learn how to be with them, how to feel the experience of what had previously been unseen or not fully seen, and we get to be with it and you get to fully feel it and experience it. And once you fully feel it and experience it, as you said, like it'll start to make sense, like
Yeah.
and that's where we can move towards completion, because it's like, first you're just wandering around and then you start to see the stuff that you didn't see before. And then when we can be with that stuff, then new possibilities, new perspectives, start to open up. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. You're like almost like instinctively getting it in your bones.
Yeah, and that's I like that you say instinctively because the visceral feeling is very different. It's like somehow it's one of those things that gets me out of here
Yeah.
and like somehow stops the exploration and allows to like, okay, now this. And even the way like there's like a different energy that I notice the circles take, like a more slowness, more like even quietness, but not like an nothing's happening, more than something's happening that doesn't need maybe as much of this. And it's
Yeah.
just like it's already there and it's being felt. And that's one of the things I do see in deep sea diver, because maybe my personality or whatever configuration leans very much into warrior.
Mhm.
That's kind of one that I'm very comfortable with. And I notice because of the contrast how different deep sea diver is. And
Yeah.
I related to that, I kind of want to jump to a different thing, if that's okay with you.
Yes, of course. Yeah, whatever's you're
To
inspired to
say
share.
even because of this, it's one of the things I had the most resistance to, right? Like even maybe
Mm.
2 weeks before Deep Sea Diver, I remember I was in one of the pod meetings and practices, and I got some coaching like real time during the circle, and the coach told me like you're like I see you're sovereign, you're sharing yourself, and I see you're exploring. But can you try this person and like try to imagine how it's like for them? And that was so counterintuitive to me. And this was before the deep sea diver. And honestly, I hadn't also watched the videos. Maybe if I had watched the videos, I would be like, oh, this is what's happening. But it just felt so counterintuitive to me. It's like this is not something I do. I don't quite get it. And I even remember I told the coach, like, I will do it. I will do it with frustration and like with resistance, but I will try it. Um, and after like watching the prep videos and doing the weekend and practicing more in the pods and just in my life, it's feeling more integrated in me, more comfortable, and I'm also getting to see the value of that specific part of deep sea diver. There's like a
Mm,
distinction between the curiosity of like I want to get you, so let me ask things. And
mm,
the somehow I don't know, it's more visceral, more energetic, something. It's a different taste of like, okay, let me be you for a moment.
yeah. And so it sounds like you're saying like at first there was a resistance in you of like, wait, like almost like did it feel like inappropriate to try someone on or like it felt like invasive maybe?
Yeah, like invasive, like I got very mental about it. It's like this will never work because this
Oh,
person and I are very different. We have different experiences, blah blah blah. That's why I like to ask questions rather than like assume things. And then I understood that that's not it, right? It's like in a way there might be some of that leaks, but there's like a how I understand it now is like a practice of empathy in like a deeper way of like I'm
yes.
not only like asking you so I get you, I'm like truly trying to take it on and see how it is, how life is from
Yes.
over there.
Yes, I think there's like an old saying of like you never know a person before you walk a mile in their shoes or something like that. And like in circling, this is what we strive to do. Like even if you just met this person and like culture, gender, whatever, they're very disparate from you what they've been sharing with you for the last 15, 20, 25 minutes, like the act of being like, okay, let me see if I get this. Like, let me actually try to inhabit your experience from your perspective and see how it occurs to me. And then it's funny because you said, like, I'm much better at asking questions. I think there's a way or a come from that even in deep sea diver when we're trying it on, you're trying it on like with an open question. You're not like trying it on and telling the person like I'm right, this is what it is. You're like, okay, like so when I imagine being you, here's what I notice. How close is that to your experience? And for me, the fun thing about that is like, even if you're like off, it causes the person to look deeper of like, okay, like, no, that doesn't quite feel right, but why doesn't it feel right? And what would feel more aligned? And like, so then even if you're guessing wrong, you're both getting deeper into this person's experience. Probably more so than you could if you were like asking intelligent questions. Like there's something about like trying it on and inhabiting it that that naturally is just like a whole nother depth.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like this distinction that you make of like trying it on and still with an open question.
Mhm.
And it makes me think of two experiences. One was just last night. I was having a conversation with someone, and we had like we had a conversation the night before, which for me felt great. But the day after, she told me like, "Hey, I have this like something feels very sticky, almost like I did something wrong. I don't know what's going on." And I was like, let's talk. But because it was so confusing for her in that moment, I almost saw like the practice came in, and it's like I will not get anywhere asking questions because this person doesn't know really what's
Yeah.
going on.
Okay.
This will not help either of us. So I tried that instead. And that's exactly what I like. Did just that, like trying it on. And don't remember exactly what I said, but I remember that she said like, yeah, but it's more like I'm also scared. Like it's not only the frustration or whatever you're saying, I'm also scared. And then even that exercise of like, okay, I'm trying to see how the world occurs from this person. I got it slightly wrong. She said like, yeah, it's also this. And then I could understand a little bit better. And then there was that opened up like both an understanding for me to understand like, oh, it's fear. Because earlier I didn't know what it was, because
Yeah.
she said like the thing with, I think I did something wrong. I was going for like guilt or like
Yeah.
shame or one of these things, and it was fear. And then even in me that changed entirely. Like, okay, so what
Yeah.
could this be about? And that opened up like a bridge so
Yeah.
that we could both kind of figure it out together.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love that. And it's funny, like you're saying, like, oh yeah, like there's a visceral way that like studying the circling method is changing you, And so you're like, oh, it was just an instinct of like, oh yeah, asking questions is not going to get me anywhere. What is going to, be best here is like, let me try on her perspective and like offer a guess, and then she can, you know, tweak and validate whatever she needs. And it's funny, like when you're saying that, I almost got goosebumps thinking about it of like how powerful this could be in so many different contexts. Whether it's romantic relationships or parent-child relationships or even like colleagues or like manager-employee, like the instinct to drop your perspective for a moment and try to see things from the other person's perspective. It's funny, I just started thinking like, oh my goodness, we should get this into the UN or something. Like could we just, what would happen in politics, both like national and international, if people were trained to be like, oh wait, can I stop pushing or defending my perspective for a hot second and try to inhabit this other person's perspective and see and feel it from this other person's perspective.
Right. And I like the distinction of feel it from this person's perspective, because somehow the experience I've had with this specific aspect of deep sea diver is going from like a scientific understanding almost of like, okay, this is person A, this is person B, almost like a specimen A has this behavior, and like this is the problem, this is where they clash.
Yeah.
And like in my mind, I'm good at that. Like I'm good at seeing patterns and seeing things, but that's not the same as like even the speaking as the person, like in the first person, not like, oh, it seems like you, blah blah blah, but oh, I am this or that,
Yes.
has something that my something very deep in me like allows it to feel it more. And somehow that layer of scientific observation of being here and the other person almost being like an it that I'm studying,
Mm-hmm.
or even like a you that I'm trying to understand, when it becomes like when I become them, even
Yes.
for a second, there's something that feels like very deep within that there's like an understanding that's almost experiential understanding of the other person.
Yeah. And it really, in my experience, it really deepens compassion.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like when we were stuck in like the sense making, like, oh, well, like, can I make sense of this person's behavior? It's still an intellectual exercise that's not like in your nervous system. It's very different to be like, can I make sense of this person's behavior? And I don't know, like, even if understand is the right word, but it's like, oh, can I embody this
Mm.
person? It's like, can I imagine what it would be like to be on the other side of this equation or to be, experiencing it from their perspective? And it's something that you can't unsee once you do it. And so I do think that it creates a fundamental shift, not just in understanding, but in your experience. And that's why it's like, oh, well, now I'm more open, more compassionate, like more willing to compromise or something like that, because you actually went through the experience of trying it on from their perspective rather than just an intellectual exercise of like imagining it from their perspective.
Right, right. And I like what you're saying about compassion, because that's been one of the effects that I see is like there's something still about sense making intellectually that's like I can still disagree, I can still be like I understand, but like still no.
Yes.
Whereas like feeling it is like, wow, wait a second. And maybe it's still, from here, it's still not what I would do, not like it can be any number of things, but there's like a very complete understanding of Yeah, but for you, of course, it's like this. And then from that felt sense of what's going on for them, something opens up. There's like just a lot more room for something.
Yeah, I like that. There's more room. Like there's more room for humanity. There's more room for compassion. There's more room for understanding. There's more room for collaboration. There's more patience. Something I've been struck by, but I'm not sure if it's true for you, but I thought I would explore. Sometimes people actually like have a initial resistance to like trying someone on or speaking as them. Did that am I understanding that like, that happened for you initially?
Yeah, definitely. Even the first time in that pod when the coach was telling me, hey, let's try this. Why don't you
Yeah.
try the circle on?
Yeah.
My initial reaction was big no.
So I'm
And
curious about that. Tell me about the
yeah.
no. Like what was alive for you in that resistance or in that objection?
Yeah, I think there are many layers to it. One was something about, and it's funny because now I see it and I see like my mind working, But there was something around assumptions, like this seems impossible, Like my logical mind is telling me like there's no way that this will be of any good, because whenever I try them on, I will still be me.
Hmm.
So some of the resistance was almost like on the impossibility of
Yeah,
things.
like this is futile
Um,
exercise.
y-
Why are you wasting my time?
yeah,
I'm not going
yeah,
to be able to put aside my perspective, Yeah.
yeah,
Ah,
exactly.
got it. Okay. So
Um,
part of it was like this disbelief that this could even be effective. Okay. What
yes,
else?
exactly.
What
This
other
belief that
layers were in there?
one other layer was it was getting me out of my comfort zone of
Mhm.
I was telling you earlier, my personality type is very much like this.
Yeah, problem
Uh,
solving. Yeah.
yeah. So it was getting me into a place where instead of this, what I needed to do was kind of like this, like let me open up, let me be you for a second. And in that, I have to drop my even pretense that I can understand.
Yes.
So, um,
Yes.
and there's like that almost jump of like, okay, the bigger I like can understand, but my little I maybe won't be able to. And that exercise, I think, felt both scary in the sense like the disbelief we mentioned earlier, and also just out of my comfort zone of like, okay, now I'm going into almost like an embodied energetic exercise. I want to say it felt a little bit mystic almost.
Yeah. It is
When
a little mystic or a little shamanic almost.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
was also part of the
Yeah.
resistance. And then I think a third layer was just I've been practicing not assuming things or like checking my assumptions. That
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning this felt counterintuitive. And now I get that it's not contradicting, because even you mentioned earlier, like you try the thing on and then you check and you still hold it with a question. And the more I do that, the more I understand it's almost like I try you on, I feel you with the open question, and that's and I will say, and instead of assuming from up here, like can my intuition be
Mm-hmm.
what's speaking rather than assumption? It's like a little bit of intuition and still checking that.
Yeah.
There's like a subtle difference that I see, but that's also some of the resistance where it was coming from.
Got it. You didn't say this one, and feel free to reject it. But I got curious from the little that I've we've been able to interact. You strike me as a very intelligent man, in that like you're very good at like problem solving and sense making. Like you're very good at like connecting the dots so that you can know or understand. Like okay, A leads to B, B leads to C, and that's how we got to D. And so this whole idea of trying someone else on, you have to even let go of sense making and logic and really surrender to not knowing and like to be in the not knowing of another person's experience and just like you said, like allow intuition to just whisper to you of like, okay, I'm gonna step into some the great unknown and see just what arises or occurs for me, which is a very different way of being in the world than being like, I'm going to observe the facts and the data and the data points, and then I'm going to put them together in a logical way to make a reasonable conclusion versus like, I'm going to fully surrender to this not knowing and just marinate in it for a while and see what intuitively arises. Was there a little bit of that alive
Yeah,
for you?
definitely. There's, like you said, the not knowing really struck to me,
Hmm.
and letting the intuition whisper.
Hmm.
Both of those things felt scary. And I want
They
to
felt
use this to
scary.
speak. I don't know which weekend this was, but it was one of the first weekends. And
Mhm.
I don't know how this happened, but maybe it was you actually. We were having a conversation about Guy. We were in a debrief. And maybe you, I'm not sure. So if he was not you, I'm sorry that I'm putting this on you. But whoever this person was said something like, yeah, Guy can be very young,
Hmm.
but there's also like this absolute possibility for yinness.
Yep,
And I didn't think I quite get how that was.
it was
Like I was
possible.
like, yeah, it seems like I want to believe you, but like I don't quite get what the experience is. And I think this is one of them, right? Like there's this thing of like I need to be fully open to receive you and to be you, and there's no amount of this that will let me be you. And that's scary because like you said,
Yeah.
it's jumping a little bit into the great unknown,
Yes.
where that intuition, that kind of where you and I are more similar in a like a deeper, more fundamental level,
Right.
starts to shine through and whisper things.
Oh, I love that you pointed that out because I think that's part of the essence of circling in general and maybe of just being human, of like, can we surrender to that core human essence that is beyond gender, is beyond culture, is beyond socioeconomic status or education level, and is just innately human, that crosses all of those gender lines, cultural lines, whatever, and is like it's such an intimate thing, which was why it feels scary because it's vulnerable. And it's funny, like as I was listening to you, something that occurred for me was this idea of, um, if I'm the person that you are being willing to try on, like it's a little scary for me too, of like, oh, like what is he going to think or feel when he tries me on? Like, is judgment going to come up or like what's going to happen? But there's also something about your willingness to step into my messy container like there's a reverence there for me of like, oh, like you care enough to try on my experience. Like you're not just trying to make sense of me and you're not just firing questions at me, but you're like, hey, let me see if I can step into your shoes for a moment and really feel like what it's like to be you in this experience. Like there's something that feels very loving and special.
Yeah, yeah. I there's two things I want to mention around that. One is a little bit more practical. During the weekend, I don't exactly remember what the exercise was, but we were doing one of the exercises. That's not like a full circling. And I remember it was like an exercise on trying the other person on. And the other person was going and like I was adjusting and adjusting. And at one point I started feeling, first I felt, my first reaction was like, oh my God, I'm scared that this person will get like frustrated, like I'm doing it wrong. And then I checked in a little bit more with myself and I saw like underlying this, there's also like a huge sense of gratitude that the person is there, and that they're willing and they're trying, and that they continue to truly want to get me. And in the end, we came to that. And when we were debriefing, I did say this, and I said like, hey, at some point I was afraid, that you get frustrated because I kept like adjusting, but I was doing that because I could see that we were moving closer, and I could almost feel that once we reach that, there will be like a level of meeting each other that we didn't have before. Uh, so I hadn't put much thought on like being on the other side, like on the receiving side of that, but there is a lot of beauty in that, and I can also speak to it from the lack. I don't know if it makes sense. Like in situations where I've seen that people very clearly are completely unaware, like blinded to how things are from over here.
Yes.
There's like an immediate sense of disconnect that appears.
Yes.
So I hadn't connected those dots until until this moment in this conversation. But even in the on the receiving end, I know very deeply how the lack of that is, how the
Yeah.
lack of like, but can you see how things are from over here for just a second?
Yeah.
Uh,
It's funny as you were saying that, I was just imagining like, being the child in a parent-child relationship or being the significant other in a romantic relationship where we're having tensions around a disagreement or around a difference of opinion. And like having this person say to me, okay, let me see if I can understand this from your perspective. Like even just like I get goosebumps even just thinking that someone be like, okay, like we're not getting anywhere. Let me see if I can see it from your perspective. Okay, let me try it on. So, from your perspective, I did this and then you did this and then I said this. And I imagine it was like this for you, or it was like that for you. And then you started feeling this. Like, how close am I? Like, I can just imagine just feeling like warm and safe and and even if they're getting it wrong, but they're letting me go, like, no, I wasn't, like you said, like, no, I wasn't annoyed. I was more afraid. And you're like, okay, okay, so you were afraid. Like, okay, when as I'm being you, what might I be afraid of? Oh, like, were you afraid I was going to reject you? You were afraid I was going to judge you? Like, you're afraid of, like, what were you like? And like that you're trying to understand how and why I was afraid. Like, I just makes me feel safer and like
yeah,
more willing to share more vulnerably and more openly.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I've noticed one other place where I've noticed this skill change the taste of my conversations outside of like formal circling practice. There's some experiences that like I will never have in this incarnation, right? Like and there are some that I might but not yet. And now I'm getting very abstract, but I'm relating with someone right now and she has kids and I don't have kids.
Mhm.
And sometimes I get a little bit intimidated because I have no idea how it is to be like responsible for other human beings and like, but when I notice I start getting very mental about it, I'm like, okay, what if I, instead of like trying to get some mental thing of how this specific situation is right now, like the busyness, the calendar, the whatever, the overwhelm, what if I put myself in and try her on right now? And there is something that's like a little bit, even though I don't have kids and I don't get the experience of life from there, it's like, okay, I see the overwhelm and it's actually not what I thought. And it's a little bit more like it allows me to build a bridge
Yes.
through that maybe I self construct by telling myself, like, this is an experience I don't understand right now. I have zero data points. But even without zero data points in my own life, there's something just about the willingness to make my own data points, let's to
Hmm.
call it in some way, that has allowed for that to build
Yeah.
understanding where there could mentally maybe never be, right? Like I
Right.
see the possibility of many people saying like, no, you will never get how that is. And maybe that's true, but it's still,
But I can get closer. I can get
yeah,
closer
exactly.
to understanding if I try to inhabit it from your perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's funny, like even when you were describing it, like little like sparks of insight were happening for me of like, oh yeah, like when you're trying to understand the pressure of being a solo parent, like you feel like the logistical pressures, but if you really try to get in there and try it on, you can feel like the existential responsibility, which is so different than the logistical, like, oh, how do I manage the clock and the money and the thing like that? Or like versus like, I am in charge of this tiny human and things that I do or say could impact their development, which is very different than like how I'm going to get all three of these kids to each of their events and still have time for me and make sure everybody's fed and nobody's cranky is very different than like, oh, how do I avoid doing something that's going to scar them for life?
Right, right. And I one insight I'm getting hearing you is how earlier when you asked about my resistance and I told you something like, I think I cannot do this because I cannot get myself out. And in like I will still be like seeing things from my perspective. And in this thing you just mentioned, this maybe it's the opposite, right? Maybe from my perspective, I am a person who's interested in logistics for whatever reason, because I struggle with calendars. But if I truly try this experience that I don't know anything of, I will see that it's really not the logistics, that it's this other thing that I hadn't thought of. So it's almost counterintuitively by trying the
Yes.
other person on, I can truly remove myself and how I was seeing them from my own lenses or something.
Yes. I love this distinction, Jorge, and I think it's a beautiful place for us to land and end today. What I think I heard you say was like, oh yeah, initially I was like, I am me. I come with my life experience, I come with my cultural background, like I come with all of these filters that can't help but influence the way I see things and how I respond to things. And so like, how can I try this, other person on who's very different than me? But now what I think I hear you saying is somehow when I commit to trying them on, my perspectives and my filters actually do kind of take a step back, and the intention to try them on from their worldview and from their perspective actually does, kind of open my perspective and make it more possible. Like, but the thing that makes that possible is the intention to try it on. Like if I
Yeah.
was just trying to think my way through it, I think I would still be influenced by my filters. But the commitment to the intention to really step into your experience and try it on somehow remedies that and like
Yeah.
transcends it and makes something else possible.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. Again, that's why we need to get it into schools and politics and things like that. Just imagine the possibilities, when human beings have the intention and the capacity to set their own stories and their own needs and their own agendas aside and just try the other person on for a minute and see what it's like for them and what is important to them and what is scaring them. And then you get to go and put your own perspective back on. But now that you have both perspectives, like it's a whole different ballgame. You're no longer trying to push your perspective against an opposition, but like now you've got two like equally valid and important experiences that might be conflicting, and you have a compassionate desire to resolve it as opposed to win,
Yeah.
or opposed to, wow. Yeah, I'll give you the last word. Tell me about the yeah. Like what just happened for you in the yeah.
Yeah, like as opposed to the desire to win. Yeah, that just struck me
Yeah,
because
or to
it's
be right.
yeah,
Like I think that happens so much with us,
yeah,
whether it's romantic relationships or friendships or, working relationships. Like we don't like to be wrong.
yeah,
We like to be right. We like to succeed. But that sets up an adversarial like construct where trying on each other's perspective like creates allyship, and then it's like when there's no right or wrong, there's no win or lose, it's just like what's possible, what's best, where's the win-win. It's like it almost intentionally promotes win-win when you have tried on both sides of the equation. You want, like, you're now invested in both sides of the equation, and we're no longer fighting. Now we're like, oh, well, how do we come together and resolve this? Yeah. Hmm. Well, this was fun. I really enjoyed
yeah.
sifting through these concepts with you today.
I also enjoyed it, Korenna. Thank you again for having me here.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed these, and I hope our community will find this deeper dive into deep sea diver helpful to them as well and inspiring. Thank you so much, dear. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Yes, see you soon.